What is up, everyone? It's your boy Sprometheus here, and today we are taking a look at another espresso accessory that has been making the rounds lately, and that is the Bplus screen. Some of you maybe first saw these on the Flare 58, but the Bplus was the OG, and it's a pretty simple idea with a very simple application, and in theory, it should be pretty effective. Essentially, it's a stainless steel mesh screen that's laid on top of your tamped coffee bed before pulling your shot. And according to Bplus, the fine mesh serves as an additional layer of protection, either preventing or reducing channeling, and all of that is achieved by a more even delivery of water to your espresso puck. If any of this sounds familiar, it's because it is. It's a lot like the AeroPress method that Scott Rao made famous a little while back, and I even did a video on it back then, but it's also just a bit different. But on top of those potential benefits, there are some intended and unintended consequences of adding this metal mesh filter to your espresso routine, and I'm about to dig into them, so let's do this. From my very first pull using the mesh screen, there was one glaringly obvious difference I encountered right away, and that was a drastically slowed down shot. Using the same coffee with the same grind on back-to-back pulls, with the only difference being the Bplus screen, my shot time went from roughly 40 grams in 21 seconds to just under 13 in the same time frame. In my mind, I felt like the screen itself would reduce the amount of volume needed to build extraction pressure and full saturation in the group. So with less headspace in the group, but not something providing a lot of resistance to the water like coffee grinds for instance, should result in a faster extraction. It wasn't until I pulled the shot and knocked out the puck that I noticed the puck itself was still tightly compressed and even slipped out whole. Thinking that maybe the dispersion screw and screen were actually causing more compression based on a small blemish on the screen itself, I decided to swap in a 21 gram basket and ran the same test that resulted in the same outcome: significantly slower shots when using the screen. So my theory is the screen itself is still creating enough resistance to the water to essentially create a secondary tamp of the grinds at some point during the shot. With the ideal tamp being roughly 30 pounds, adding just one more bar of pressure to the actual puck itself is, 14 pounds of pressure? So you could imagine that would create a denser puck, resulting in a slower shot. Or it could be as simple as the mesh just slowing down the water flow, but based on some quick tests that I ran, it doesn't appear to slow down the water much at all. But that really isn't bad news, and it's not really good news, it's just news. But I'll elaborate more on that when we get to the extraction section of this video. This is one of the easier tests to do, and the results from a bottomless portafilter really do speak for themselves. To do this test, I turned off any pre-brewing or early water delivery to allow the screen to really highlight its ability to produce a clean pull. Each of these shots used the same coffee and recipe, but were dialed in differently to make up for the shot time differences pointed out in section 1, which means the shot using the screen was significantly coarser. Without the screen, you'll notice it does take a bit longer to come together into one stream, which can be a clue to issues with channeling or distribution. The shot using the screen, on the other hand, came together much quicker and remained centered and cleaner. Also, as the shots progressed, I noticed something that I hadn't seen mentioned, and the pulls using the screens seemed to show less obvious signs of puck degradation as the shot went on. As we all know, during a shot of espresso, coffee is under a lot of pressure, not to mention hot water, and it begins to break down and becomes less able to resist that intensity. This is what creates espresso. But as you pull longer and longer shots, the likelihood of a channel or a spurt raises exponentially, because the resistance is decreasing and the water flow is increasing. So in another surprise twist and win for the screen, it seems like they do a good job at keeping things together through the longer shots, so this could be perfect for those who like allonges or lungos, on top of the benefits of a more even flow. Last but not least, let's talk extraction percentage, because that's what the coffee nerds really want to know. Of course, I've already seen some posts and videos on this very same topic, but as we all know, I've got to put my own 2 cents in and kind of try this out for myself. So for this test, I pulled 5 shots of the same coffee on the same recipe, and dialed in to 20 or so seconds to ensure that neither of these was getting any more or less contact time during the pull. So of course, that's a big wall of numbers, but what do they mean? Well, these results show a few different things. For one, you can see that the screen on average creates more extraction, 0.19% to be exact, and that's roughly equal to 0.1%. And this gap gets a little bit closer when you calculate the median, which is 0.12%. These numbers are pretty close together and don't fall into what I would consider a tasteable range on average, but just like any other brew method, a large difference in grind has the potential to change the flavor and texture. In the case of this coffee and comparison, there really wasn't a better tasting shot than the other, but there was a small difference in acidity on the non-screenshot being a little bit brighter. Otherwise, they were pretty similar, and really when it comes down to these taste things, it's kind of more of a preference than anything else. So let's quickly go over what I learned about the Bplus screen. So for one, their claim of an even delivery of water to the puck and a reduction in channeling is legit. In testing, shots using the screen ran smoother and cleaner from start to finish. Also, the screen itself did increase my shot time, and whether or not my theory about the added pressure is correct, I had to grind coarser than without the screen, and not just a little bit, I had to make a relatively large adjustment. But as we know, a coarser grind makes it easier for water to pass through, which in turn can create a more even flow of water through the coffee, which can absolutely result in a better overall extraction, which is also what I found between the screen and no screen shots. Even though the differences were small, it does demonstrate it may have even more extraction potential depending on your dial-in, your brew temperature, or your coffee. Also buried within all of these experiments and their benefits is a cleaner espresso machine, and perfect compacted pucks that knock out almost entirely cleanly. So in the end, I would say the Bplus screens get an A+ rating from me. It works as advertised and then some. I don't see a downside honestly, and that's rare in anything. And with all that said, I think it's time to wrap this one up, so you know the drill, drop your thoughts on this video, Bplus screens, or any other coffee stuff you want to chat about in the comment section down below, and I'll see you next week. And of course, a big thank you to my June Patreons, Ads, Jacob P, Christopher, Squeegee, Rowe, Brian, Lisa, Andre, Sean, Noel, Spookus, Samantha, Claire, Stephen, Alexis, Bound Coffee, James K, Josh Horrison, Corey C, Curry, Jeff Froth, Joey N, Thomas B, UK Espresso, Tim, Jason C, Jerry, Matt Ray, Home Barista Coach, Gumby, Zachary V, Robert Underdunk, Jeffrey R, BJK Cafe, Daniel P, Mike B, Brian M, Brandon B, Tyler M, Barista Michael, Sebastian, Matthew C, JRC, Absolute, Stephen G, Jose, Lauren, Keefe, and Stephen A. And of course, a big thank you to the Barista and Barback tiers. If you want any information on my Patreon, there's a link in the description and in the upper right hand corner right now. And of course, a big thank you to you for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Hit that little bell for notifications of new videos posted every Friday. Follow my Instagram at Sprometheus for content throughout the week, my blog at Sprometheus.com, my coffee at littlegiant.coffee, and as always, stay caffeinated. Ponyboy.